Coming up on show 810, Lucid say, whatever you do, don't call us Tesla killers. I'll tell you why if you stick around. Plus on the podcast today, VW are making the ID.4 look like a Kia intentionally, but only for the test pictures. Toyota RAV4 Prime and Ford Escape compared. They're both plug-in hybrids. Electrify Canada gets bigger. A 100 kilowatt-hour Tesla Model 3. Really? Well, they are out there in the wild, but what does it mean? And Ford Mustang Mach-E customers will get some free charging. Those stories and many more. It's a packed show today, so let's crack on. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening in the world. Welcome to EV News Daily. For Monday, 15th of June, my name is Martyn Lee, and I go through every EV story, so you don't have to. We'll kick off with Lucid, and they say, whatever you do, don't call us Tesla killers, please. With a brand new state-of-the-art factory nearing completion in the desert and an energy-dense battery pack that uses cylindrical cells, it's all too tempting to set up a rivalry between Tesla and Lucid. It's a trope that Ars Technica say we've been guilty of ourselves, but it's a bad take. According to Peter Rawlinson, he is Lucid's CEO and CTO, and I quote, "Please don't describe us as a Tesla killer. The world's big enough that we can both thrive and prosper alongside each other," end quote. And boy, oh boy, doesn't that sum up the world in 2020, the world of social media in which we all live, where everybody wants an instant answer to everything. Is it good, bad? Is it on or off? Is it everything has to be binary, non-binary? Everything has to be so clear-cut on social media. Everyone wants a fight as well, but also, why can't we have 20, 30, 50 successful EV companies? Why does Lucid's success mean that Tesla have to fail, but it's something that is just propagated over and over and over again? Every EV company that starts or gets mentioned is a Tesla killer. You know, if you've been listening to this podcast more than 5 minutes, I hate that phrase and have always refused to go anywhere near it. But this is an article about why it's ridiculous, so I think we can justifiably talk about it today. And it's a really good point, because the Lucid Air is in no way trying to eat Tesla's dinner. They're more like starting out where Tesla did. Well, the Lucid Air will have a 900-volt electrical architecture, which is pretty rare, higher than the Porsche Taycan, which sits around 800. Rawlinson said that the Air will also move to a new in-house silicon carbide inverter, as well as a switch from induction to permanent magnet motors on the front and rear. The cylindrical lithium-ion battery cells are going to be coming from LG Chem, but Lucid designs and builds the actual battery packs, and Formula E has even contributed to the management of the packs. Lucid supplies the batteries to all the teams in the race series. It's part of a cooperation between companies like Lucid and McLaren here in the UK. The company's experience of Formula E is teaching it about the predictive modelling of battery degradation. Peter Rawlinson is the VP, was the VP of Vehicle Engineering before 2013 at Tesla, and it's an excellent article that I recommend you go read. Just some highlights, some quotes. He says, "They are our own design, which is very innovative. They've got very low cogging torque." The motors he's talking about, very low cogging torque, so they're ultra efficient motors. We've got our own epicyclic reduction transmission. We do our own differential. It's all innovative. It's state of the art. Our rotor spins at 20,000 RPM, and each of those in standard form is rated at 600 horsepower. He said that the combined motor, gearbox, the diff, the inverter, all together weigh in at 73 kilos. That's 160 pounds, which is a kind of a real game changer in terms of saving weight. The key metric, the volumetric power density, which is creeping up to 17 kilowatts a litre, according to Rawlinson. And I quote, "And I think that's unprecedented. That's twice as good as any competitor out there that I'm aware of. That's a cornerstone of what we've done with LG Chem now in our production supply agreement. We've worked with them to help develop the cell chemistry to a much higher standard, particularly making it degrade less as a consequence of repeated fast charging. That's important because our 900-volt architecture has been developed very much with a fast charging network partner Electrify America in mind, end quote. And I'll pop a link to the full interview in the show notes if you would like to read more. I'm really optimistic about Lucid's efficiency, by the way. The engineering that's going on at Lucid, I think, is very, very good. They're not going to be trying to sell cars in the same market as Tesla do now. But if you rewind, when Tesla were Model S and then maybe the X as well, that's the market Lucid are going for. The Mercedes kind of E-Class or even S-Class buyers, people with 80 or £100,000 to spend on an EV, that I think is where they will start. And now they may end up making a mainstream EV in years to come, but for now, they're certainly going to be making a car that is, I think, reasonably expensive. Not that I know a great deal about the final selling price of Lucid. I'm not sure that's ever been confirmed for the air, but either way, the technology, I'm really, really optimistic about that. I think they've been quietly getting on with the job in hand, pointing no fingers at certain other car companies who aren't actually even making an EV at the moment and who spend more time on Twitter talking about how they're so great. I think Lucid are just very quietly getting on with this, and they're one of the ones that I am really, really optimistic about, and I hope that comes to be true. VW making the ID.4 available to order Wednesday. You can finally order the ID.4 if you're one of the first 30,000 odd people in the queue. But after that will come the ID.4, a crossover style car that in March this year, spy photographers caught it out doing some cold weather testing, and VW had made it put some panels over it to make it like an Opel Grandland X. Well, they've done the same now. This time they've put a new front end on the ID.4. They've basically taken the front of a Kia, like a Kia e-Niro, and slapped it on the front of the ID.4. You are fooling no one, VW. It's like when they put the fake exhaust pipes on the back. You are fooling no one. According to Motor1.com, the power on the ID.4 will be all-wheel drive, 2 motors, combined output of 302 horsepower, and they're aiming for a range of just over 300 miles, about 500 Ks on the WLTP test cycle, which would translate, not an exact science, but somewhere near 270 or 280 miles on the EPA evaluation. So I'm really looking forward to the ID.4, which I think they're going to swing to in the US pretty quickly, actually. I think before the end of this year, because the ID.3 isn't going to the USA. So here in Europe as well, and in China, the ID.4 will be a more popular car than the ID.3, which is getting all of the attention because it's the first one, but that crossover style SUV shape is where the money really is, where the customers are, I should say. Let's compare a couple of plug-in hybrids. Yesterday, by the way, on Sunday's show, we did a really in-depth listener feedback show all about what people think, halfway through 2020, what the listeners of this show, what they think a plug-in hybrid should do mileage-wise. And it was really interesting to take the temperature of what people think about plug-in hybrids at the moment. And so have a listen to yesterday's show if you're interested. The price of these cars, the Ford, which is the Ford Escape plug-in, will start at $33,000 and go up to $38,800. The Toyota RAV4, pricing hasn't been confirmed, but it will start base model around $40,000. Now, well, that's $47,000 odd in Canada. Now, the thing about the federal tax credit, which is, it's not money off a car like we have, but it's certainly money off next year's tax bill. If you qualify for that, and if you're buying a $40,000 car in a RAV4 plug-in, you probably do qualify for that, then you will effectively be getting the car for $32,000 and change, which is interesting. The RAV4 Prime is meant to be a bit of an all-rounder. The Prime is based on the RAV4 hybrid, so 2.5 litre 4-cylinder Atkinson cycle engine, and of course it's the plug-in hybrid version has more powerful motor generators, and it's got a 17.8 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery, which I think is probably about 16 usable, between 15.5 and 16 kilowatt hours usable. Total output of the system is 302 horsepower, and that's up from 219 for the hybrid, says Motor Illustrated. Part of the setup is that the electric motors on the front and the rear axles, of course, they have no physical link between them. There is still kind of like a mini transmission tunnel hump thing running down the middle of the car, but that just could be the exhaust, I suppose, for the engine. However, much, much lower than a typical transmission tunnel. So all-wheel drive, and of course electronically four-wheel drive. The second motor is standard on the RAV4 hybrid. Performance is so good. 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds. I've seen it advertised as 0 to 100 Ks in 6.2. Fun fact, they say that it makes the RAV4 Prime the second fastest car in Toyota's catalogue, behind the Supra. Well, the combined fuel consumption is 90 mpge. It'll do 42 miles of all-electric driving if you want the RAV4 Prime, whereas the Ford Escape plug-in hybrid, different beast, right? They're going to get compared, they're going to get lumped in the same along with the Mitsubishi Outlander, but a bit of a different beast. Front-wheel drive only for the Ford. Where you're listening, it might be called the Cougar, by the way, outside of the US. And maybe front-wheel drive is going to be a bit of an obstacle for colder climates, maybe in Canada and the northern regions of the US, where maybe all-wheel drive is a little more desirable. Less powerful, 221 horsepower, smaller battery, 14.4 kilowatt hours, and less range on EV power, 37 miles. I'm impressed with the Toyota RAV4 Prime. Of course, it has a plug socket, so immediately I don't mind talking about it. I know some people have issues with plug-in hybrids, but look, it's a well-engineered and a very well-specced plug-in hybrid. It's an expensive car, of course, but if you do qualify for the federal tax credit, then, you know, you're sort of early 30s for a car that is not that much more expensive, a couple of thousand more than the soft hybrid, which you absolutely shouldn't buy because nobody should be buying soft hybrids in the year 2020. That's got a heat pump. Here's the caveat. From what I've heard, there's not going to be many on sale in 2020, which is a real shame. Certainly going to be plenty made for the Japanese market, but different reports from between 500 and 1,500 for the whole year this year in the US. Toyota, if you're listening and you know differently, please tell me you're going to make more than 1,500 cars for the rest of the year. It's a really, really good plug-in. They insist it's not a compliance car, but come on, for Toyota, that is like losing them down the back of the sofa. That's nothing for a company that big. And they're gonna sell out. There will be dealers who, and I suppose I do know somebody I could ask actually, who will have waiting lists for this, and so they should. It looks like a really compelling car if you want a RAV4, but you want to do most of your miles on electric. Well, moving on, and the opening of the first British Columbia station for Electrify Canada today announces the official expansion into Western Canada. The high-speed EV charging network will announce an additional 8 charging station locations by the end of the year, says Tom Mologney for Inside EVs. They've got 4 stations already, Ontario, 15 more in the planning stages for Ontario and Quebec, so it's good to see the western part of the country getting more love. Electrify Canada's first phase of development includes 32 charging station sites, and those include the 19 already that I mentioned in Quebec and Ontario, and 13 in Alberta and British Columbia. So spending more money there for Electrify Canada, and it's a good thing as well. Well, Tesla has just received some very interesting approval in this country, here in the UK, to become an electric provider, a utility that is potentially huge news. They've now been granted this license as of today, and it could well establish Tesla as an electricity provider in the UK based on their ability to store and then resell energy. Now, if I want, for instance, I'm the other end of the country. I live on the south coast. I'm as far away from Scotland as anyone can get. But if I wanted Scottish Energy to be my electricity provider, that would be fun. I can pay them to do the billing for it. So, in theory, anybody could then become a Tesla Energy customer for their home electricity. Now, Tesla have some software called AutoBidder. It's a real-time trading and control platform that enables power producers to monetize energy stored in battery assets, says Simon at Tesla Rati. The UK's recent approval for Tesla Energy is noteworthy because so far Tesla Energy has largely been untapped on any kind of national level. So it's a big business. It's potentially an enormous business. They know how to do software. They know how to do batteries. And one of the reasons why they get a lot of credit is in South Australia, Hornsdale Power Reserve has been so successful. Massive power pack farm managed by their software, Autobidder. The same system, which they're rumoured, and why wouldn't you use it? Because if you have it, to be using in the UK. Again, Elon flew into the country recently, I think last week or the week before. They're looking at land in the southwest region, kind of Bristol. I was joking with a friend who knows the band Portishead. I was like, well, actually, they're named after a place near where Elon is looking. And so, some land. I don't think in a million years Tesla are going to build a car in the UK. Could be wrong. But Tesla Energy, could they use the UK as a battery and energy storage base, either exporting them to Europe, but we're not going to be in Europe, so the borders are going to be an issue. So are they looking at the UK as a bit of as we leave Europe at the end of the year, we become more of an island again, more insular, more inward looking. Are they looking at the UK as a kind of as an island that is relatively, we've got some interconnects to the continent, by the way, that leave, we've got 5 or 6 or 7 big underground cables that you can move electricity along, but are they looking at that market as something which they can experiment in or even get a big foothold in by using their battery technology to store energy when it's cheap and resell it when it's more expensive, and ultimately to domestic customers as well? It's a little bit nerdy, a bit energy geeky, and it's why the mainstream media won't really pick up on it. But you and I on this podcast know this could be huge news if all of a sudden because the UK, we are the windiest place in Europe. We've got all the wind, right? And we've got loads of wind power, and it's not always windy every day, but it's often. But what if you could store that energy for times when it's less windy? It's really, really interesting to think about. And, of course, there's always the Tesla fans as well, who would just get a kick out of their home energy being provided by Tesla and Elon. Okay, moving on. Very quickly, before we get to 20 minutes on the podcast today, Ford Mustang Mach-E owners will receive 250 kilowatt hours of complimentary charging through Ford Pass rewards at Electrify America stations when they get their cars. Sounds like a big headline. It's about 3 fill-ups of the big battery. And it's probably about £10 worth, not even that, of electricity, like $15. So clearly, they're not giving you a great monetary value charging giveaway here by giving you 250 kilowatt hours of complimentary charging. What I think this is about, because it's not about the money, it's like $15. This is more about your first 3 or 5 charging sessions being free and encouraging you to do it. I think this is a smart move, because it's not about the money. It's about encouraging people to, go and try those fast chargers with Electrify America on, because it's free. So you might as well go use them. And actually, if you're new to EV, plugging in can be one of the daunting things. It was for me. Sounds silly now, but which plug do I use and how do I do it? And what if it goes wrong? All those things. When you do it, you're like, oh, this is easy. It's fine. So, smart move by Ford with what seems like a bit of a giveaway. It's not really, but I think it's a behavioural thing they're getting at here. Final story, by the way, that I will get to on the podcast today is all about Tesla's Model 3 100 kilowatt hour version. We learned late last year from a user on Twitter who goes by the name of Green the Only that the Model 3 firmware had some scattered references to 100 kilowatt hour battery packs. Now, that's been going on for a year now, more than a year. Speculation was at the time that they were going to bring out a even longer range version of the Model 3, which of course hasn't happened. But now, another Twitter user, Zeus7F1, has shared a screenshot. The Tesla Model 3 that they were in was put into factory mode, and it shows you on screen that the car has a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack in a Model 3. This is a Twitter user who doesn't have an avatar and has a handful of followers, so I would normally ignore this without question. But the original kind of hacker, Green the Only, who has got a long track record, says, actually, this is true. Interesting stuff. Green the Only says, I know they exist. Was hoping to get direct access to one soon. It looks like you beat me to it. So these cars are out there. Are they test cars? Are they fleet cars? I don't know. Will they be part of Tesla's Battery Day announcement? Elon has already taken to Twitter to deny that they are developing, read his words, to deny that they are developing a 100 kilowatt hour pack for the Model 3 and the Model Y. It could be developed. It could be finished. He was very specific. We are not currently developing, he said. Words to that effect. But it could be that it's developed. It's finished. And that we'll find out more very soon. It's got about 33% more energy from the biggest battery size Model 3 at the moment. And what would they call it? The long range? The super long range? Mega range Model 3. Sorry, I'm being silly now. Let's wrap up the podcast today. If you want to take part in our question of the week this week, tell me about a conversation that you've had with someone where you introduced them to EV. I'd love to hear your personal stories, actually. Email me hello@evnewsdaily.com or leave a comment on the YouTube show. Well, there are 231 patrons of the podcast now. Their generosity means that you get to listen to this show gratis. If you want to take part in Patreon, you're more than welcome, by the way. It's patreon.com/evnewsdaily, but no pressure. I'll make the show either way. 809 previous shows are in the archive thanks to our premium partners, Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby, Avid Technology, Brightsmith Group for Clean Tech Talent, Porsche of the Village, Cincinnati, Audi of Cincinnati East, Volvo Cars of Cincinnati East, and now nationalcarcharging.com and alohacharge.com in Hawaii. If you can leave a little review ever on Apple Podcasts, it helps me grow the show and catch up on socials anytime, and I'd love to have a chat with you. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow, and remember, there's no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.